Okay, here we go. We're going to talk about some of the essential gear that you're going to need if you're honestly looking at making a living and making a go out of being a full-time freelance and photo and videographer. There's a handful of things that you absolutely positively have to have if you're going to go out there and you're going to try to make a living at it. And people are going to tell you different things. People always shoot different things. They're going to say, do I need to shoot Sony? Do I need to shoot Canon? Do I need to shoot Nikon? They're gonna try to tell you what kind of camera to buy, when to buy, all those different things. They're just a handful of essential things that you need. First of all, get yourself a good tripod. Try to make sure it's not something that's a tank. You don't want something that you're lugging around. You don't want a 30-pound tripod that you're lugging around. I find myself that carbon fiber is a little too light for some of the stuff that I do. I do like something that weighs a little bit more than that. I like the aluminum tripods. I have one that I carry with me just about everywhere that I go, and it has a fluid head on it. I like using fluid heads or taking the fluid head with me because it's more versatile than just your 3-axis still photo tripod. I can do most everything that I need to do with a still tripod. I can do it with the fluid head. It has just about the same amount of movements, but I can't do the fluid head movements with the tri-axis still tripod. So, but it's up to you. If you want, you can get one for each. I have several of each. I have several fluid head ones. I always like good value with them at Frodo tripods. They've been real good to me. I do recommend that you think about ahead of time, where am I going to be shooting? What are the possibilities? What are some of the things that may be difficult to places to bring that tripod? Is it going to fit in the car? Is it going to fit in your camera bag? Is it going to be too heavy? Is it going to be too light? Just try to think about. Yeah, you too, man. All right, man. Just think about. Just put some forethought into what you're doing. I use checklists for my camera bag and things that I always need. You need a camera, whether you're shooting still or video. You're going to need your media. Are you going to be shooting film? Some people shoot film, and you can carve out a real good niche doing portraits on film if that's what you're passionate about. I always encourage you to shoot what you're passionate about, because if you don't, then it can be just another grind. But if you don't mind going into digital, or if you don't mind going back and forth from film to digital, just make sure that you really know what you're doing. You're comfortable shooting film. Make sure if you're shooting transparency, make sure you're comfortable and you know what the limitations are. So much of photography isn't about what can I do, it's what can't I do. Knowing the limitations of you, your skill set, and what your camera can and can't do. You're going to need a camera that can do wide shots, medium shots, and tight shots. You may not necessarily need to do macro shots right away, but that's a real good way to add interesting perspective to things that you're shooting. If you get up really close and tight, the two lenses I really recommend. Canon puts out like a 24 to 70 millimeter lens, and the essential one at one point or another, when you can afford to get there, is the f2.8 70 to 200. I don't leave home without that lens. I have an f2.8 Canon. I started with f4, which is about half the price, but I started out with that f4, worked my way up to an f2.8, but it's paid for itself more times than I can count. And the old school ones are built really well. I'm not real familiar with some of the new ones, but if you are looking at pro quality stuff, Sony, Canon, Nikon, any of those guys, they're it's worth spending the extra money to get the Pro Series quality, because they'll last you. One of the lenses I've had for probably 14 years now, and it's as sharp as the day as I got it, man. So you're going to need a good camera. I recommend getting something that's at least 30 megapixels if you're shooting still. If you're shooting video, 4K, it should have the ability to shoot 60 frames per second. Pretty much everybody, or every digital pro or prosumer camera out there can shoot 4K 60p. If you really want to get some really cool footage and you want to be able to shoot stuff that's a little bit faster, that needs to be slowed down a little bit more, look for a camera that'll shoot video at 4K at 120 frames a second. Kind of a rule of thumb that I shoot when I shoot slow motion is I shoot people at about 60 frames a second. You know, when you see them walking in slow motion through a movie, oftentimes that shot at 60 frames a second and then played back at about 24 frames a second. But then if you want to shoot something faster than that, maybe somebody riding a wheelie on a motorcycle, or somebody, you know, running on a horse, somebody it's a full gallop and you want to slow that down, try shooting at 120 frames a second and again playing it back at 24 frames a second. It definitely makes a difference when you're doing that. When you're looking at buying those lenses, you're going to want something that's going to be wide. I have a variety of wide lenses. I think that a 24 to 70 is a really good, what we call walk around lens to get. You can also start out with kit lenses. You don't have to buy the pro quality. You could start out, a good one to start out with and a good one to carry in your bag is a 50 millimeter. That's about as close as we can get to the human eye of what we actually see. Is a 50 millimeter on a full frame. And that's another question. Do we need full frame? There's people that say, yeah, you need a full frame. I had shot probably 10 years before I got a full frame camera because I was shooting more sports than anything. I needed the distance. I needed to be able to shoot and zoom in on a soccer field, you know, at the other end of the field. I needed to be able to zoom in on a football game. So I needed a cropped sensor so I could get that little extra zoom on my end. On the other side of that coin, when you go to a full frame, your wide angle is going to be wider than it is going to be on your crop sensor. So that's kind of up to you if you know what you're going to be shooting. If you're shooting nature and landscape stuff, I would highly recommend shooting full frame. If you're shooting things like food shots, it doesn't matter quite as much. You just want to make sure that you have good glass. Try not to buy any what we call not aftermarket, but secondary type lenses from different companies that are not Canon, Nikon, or Sony. And I say that, you know, some people will go out there and they'll buy into these kind of off brands. And the problem with that is some of them have plastic elements, and you end up dealing with something in post-production called chromatic aberration. You end up the edges of your image are not perfectly square, and they're not perfectly straight because the build quality just isn't there. They're not going to be able to hold out in the rain or snow. You know, they're going to get water leaking into the lens. I shot into a blizzard one time with my camera. I shot till my camera froze. I was scraping ice off the front of my lens as the snow hit the lens, and I got home and I didn't know if my camera was dead or what. It thawed out. I charged it back up and it fired back up. Man, I've been shooting that same camera ever since. But it's like, if you spend that extra money, you only have to buy it once. You don't have to buy it over and over again. If you buy, maybe an off-brand, you're going to end up not only are you not going to be happy with the images that you get, but you're also not going to be able to blow them up. And they're just not as sharp. They're not as clear. And you end up spending hours and hours and hours in post-production. I'm sure there's AI things that you can do now, but there are things that you can see that are AI. And they're not custom crafted like custom photography and videography. When it's done right, you can really see the difference. But just make sure that that's what you're going. Try to hold yourself to a higher level. You know, one of the things that I used to get upset about was people would call me up and say, "Hey, Jeff, I want you to come out and reshoot this thing. We had somebody else and they came out and I never saw the images. They won't return my phone calls," or one thing or another. They called me up and I was really kind of hurt. I'm like, well, how come you didn't call me first? And then I began to realize, man, I'm getting like 90% of my business is coming from going out, cleaning up the mess other people couldn't deliver on. So if you make it your policy, make it your own personal policy to show up on time and turn stuff in pro quality, on time, and under budget. And that's how you get a good reputation. That's when people call you. They say, "Hey, I got a tight turnaround, man. Can you squeeze me in?" I love hearing that because they don't bark at your invoice. You send them that invoice. "Hey, man, you gave me 48 hours. I lost sleep over this. I stayed up, but I delivered, and they call me back again. And that's really, it's a good feeling because there's so much competition out there. It's a great feeling to be able to get that. But invest in a medium wide, like a 24 to 70 lens, and invest in what we call a nifty 50, which is a 50 millimeter prime lens. Invest in a long lens, a 24 to 70. I can't say enough about that lens. One of the best lenses ever made. Nikon, Sony, Canon all carry those lenses, and they are tack sharp, and they produce beautiful images, and you're going to use that more than more than you think. And it's an investment that you're going to get your money back. Definitely get yourself a nice camera bag. One thing, some guys, they'll shoot a backpack. I prefer a single strap camera bag for a couple different reasons. When I can, I get away with it. One, if I don't, or I can't get my tripod, some places you can't bring a tripod in to shoot, but I can set my bag on the table and set my camera on top of that. And if I'm filming, I can move it steadily on my bag, and it helps me remove the micro jitters if I can't get the fluid head in there. I can also set my camera bag and manipulate it a couple different ways to where if I wanted to do a time lapse, if I wanted to do a long exposure, if I wanted to do something that was extraordinary, backpacks are good. But the thing I like about the single strap camera bag is you throw it around your neck, you pull it around in front of you, you can set your camera on that, and you could film from on top of that camera. You can do it with a backpack if you put the backpack on backwards, but it's a little bit different. It's a different beast when you're filming when you're filming like that. But definitely get yourself a good quality camera bag. I pretty much only use Tamarack. I use Tamarack and Pelican, and neither one of those have ever let me down. I've heard really good things about Lowepro. But get yourself investing in a good camera bag. I have one camera bag that I've had for about 15 years now. It's a Tamarack backpack, and the only thing that ever happened to that is the zipper on it kind of stopped zipping, and I took it into a luggage shop, and the guy took it in the back and came out 5 minutes later and said, "There you go, dude, no charge." And he fixed my zipper. I guess he bent it back on and realigned it and gave it back. He said, "Come back when you got a real problem with it." That's the only problem I've ever had with that bag. Comes with the torrential rain cover that tucks away neatly inside it. And one of the Tamarack backpacks I use is a rolling backpack. When I travel with it, it's lifesaver because you put all that camera gear. It weighs about 25 pounds, maybe 30 pounds when I get it fully loaded with lenses and cameras and stuff. But on wheels, you can drag it around through the airport, and it's not killing your shoulder. Definitely, if you can get a rolling backpack, I highly advise that. That's one of the things I have a hard time leaving home without, is that rolling backpack. Just to have, you want to make sure that don't just buy the cheapest cards you can get. When it comes to SD cards or CF cards or whatever your camera takes, don't buy the cheapest film. When you buy the cheapest, you end up with mediocre quality. If you buy the cheapest SD cards and they're not fast enough to film in 4K, you're going to get lag. You're gonna have issues with it. You want to be able to shoot and not have to think about it. Your camera should be an extension of who you are. The gear that you use you should know it like the back of your hand. You should be able to adjust your tripod one-handed while holding your camera. You should be able to reach down in your bag and feel which card you need, and just know exactly what's in your hand and what you got, and know that it's a fast enough card. It has enough space on it. It has the capacity for all of your needs. Is the read rate fast enough? Is the write rate fast enough? Can it shoot in 4K? And is it something that's going to be a little bit future-proof? Nothing is totally future-proof. They're always going to be trying to sell us more media and more cards and things like that. But definitely get this stuff in. And on the back end too, when you have a really slow card and you're trying to download 128 gigabytes on a really slow card, it can be hours and hours and hours on just trying to download it to a hard drive. Whereas if you have a really fast card, it can take you can go from hours to just a few minutes if that card is fast enough. So invest in fast cards, invest in hard drives. SD drives, I use an SD drive to dump all my stuff to, and then I use it as a scratch drive when I'm editing. I'll put my project on an SD drive and edit from that, and then I store everything on just your regular spin-up drives. And that is a good way to save some money. It's a good way to speed up your workflow. Always back your stuff up. That's the very first thing you should do when you get a chance. Don't buy one hard drive at a time. Buy two. Buy two, and one's a backup. You archive it so you have those files. When people call and reorder, I want a 40 by 50 canvas print of my wedding 10 years ago. You go back and you pull up that hard drive and you got it. I want you to remake the footage of that project. We want it for this way instead of that way. You got it. You go back and you got to archive. Always back up everything. So do that. Get yourself a good editing MacBook. I totally believe in Macs. One of the very first MacBook Pros I bought, I bought it used. I paid $1,100 for it. I was playing around with it on the passenger seat when I was driving home at the stoplights. It was in an old laptop case I had. When I got home that day, I was so excited to go inside and play around with it. I jumped out of the car, I reached back in and I grabbed my laptop case and I pulled it out of the car and I hadn't zipped it up. And that very first MacBook that I bought flipped out of the car and bam, smack, right on the pavement, man. I had saved for a long time to buy that outright. I don't believe in taking on debt. I thought, well, if I can afford it, I'm going to get it. But that MacBook Pro hit that pavement, and I could feel my eyes well up with tears. And I went inside, and I set it on the counter, and I opened it up, and it fired right up. There was a big dent on the bottom of it, and I ran that MacBook Pro for 3 years, and it was already out of a warranty. There wasn't any Apple Care on it, and I took it into the MacBook store because I was editing. Like 3 years down the road, I'm editing on it, and it just glitched out and it stopped working altogether. And I took it down to the Mac store, and they said, well, you're going to need a new logic board. And I said, well, how much is a new logic board? And again, I was a single father at the time. And they said, it's going to be $500. So here I am with a MacBook that I got that's probably about 4 years old, 5 years old at that time. And I'm thinking, well, I could put $500 to save this one I paid $1,100 for, or I can put that $500 towards a new one, which will be faster. It'll speed up my workflow. It'll help me service more customers in a shorter amount of time. And so I was like, well, I don't know. He said, if you leave it with us over the weekend, we can have it for you on Monday. And I was like, yeah. He's like, what's wrong? I said, well, I don't know if I want to put that towards this one or if I want to buy a new one. And so he said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, $500, man, that's for a logic board. He said, no. These logic boards were faulty to begin with. We'll replace it for you for free. And so I left it over the weekend. I went back in Monday morning, had a brand new logic board, and I think I ran it for another 2 or 3 years before I retired that one. I never did. Still works to this day. I'm totally sold on Mac and their service. The new M4 Pro or M4 Max chips are optimized for editing raw footage, and so I recommend get the very best that you can afford. I don't recommend taking on a debt for it. Don't go into debt for it unless you know for sure 3 years from now or 2 years from now, I'm still going to be shooting, I'm still going to be using it, and you need to be able to afford it, then I would recommend that. But, always try to buy the best that you can. You don't necessarily need to go overboard. You don't have to buy a whole series of prime lenses to begin with. A couple of zooms, one good low light prime lens will get you going. Get a camera that'll shoot 4K, at least 60 frames a second, and it's going to be at least a 30 megapixel camera with a tripod and a good camera bag with some good cards, hard drives, and you should be good to go. So yeah, I'll get into more gear as we go along, but those are the essentials I think you need. And if you like this channel, you like what you're hearing, be sure to like and subscribe. I think we're number 3 in a series of 97 of the things that, or 97 more videos, 100 of them covering all sorts of different things that I've encountered as a full-time freelance photo and videographer, working locally, regionally, and now globally. Stuff I've accumulated throughout my career. So we'll get into more of that later, but thanks for sticking around. Be sure to like and subscribe.